Welcome to the Dentalligentsia Podcast. I'm Nick Zagar, and I'm with my partner, Remy Isdaner, and we're Mirlo Real Estate Partners. Today we have a special guest, Alex Rasmussen from Neon Canvas. Hey, Alex, how's it going?
Hey, good. Remy, Nick, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. We got to know each other about a month ago when you guys asked me to do this podcast. I think you're doing a cool thing in the space, and I'm excited to jump on and share some insight with you.
That's awesome. We love to interview people like you, premium dental vendors, because we actually, we thought we knew a lot about the dental world, but the more people that we interview and speak to, we find that there's more and so much more information, and so it's as real estate brokers, we want to kind of be able to give our clients the best guidance and the best tools to be the best at what they do. And so being able to connect them and get insight from people like you really revs us up. So we're excited to be here and talk. But why don't you first start out and tell us a little bit about Neon Canvas and how it came to be?
Yeah, Neon Campus is a digital marketing boutique that was founded in Memphis, Tennessee by myself and my business partner, Dr. Kyle Fagala. Dr. Kyle is an orthodontist, and I was at the time building another digital marketing agency that mostly was working with the legendary Memphis companies like the Botanical Gardens and the Memphis Zoo and Graceland and like these great, FedEx and these awesome Memphis companies. So that was kind of my niche at the time, just working with local, small business and medium to large size local Memphis businesses. When I met Dr. Kyle, and Dr. Kyle had gone through his ortho residency program at the University of Tennessee, which the University of Tennessee's college is located in Knoxville, but the med school is actually here in Memphis. And it's an incredible med school with lots of specialties, but ortho being one of their best. And within that, Dr. Kyle had other residents and friends that he was graduating with that were taking off to Oklahoma City and opening practices, Northern Virginia, LA, Seattle, Utah. They were all over the country. And he started sending me his buddies because he came to me to build his website for a practice that he hadn't, that he wasn't buying. He was building it from scratch. So he was finding a shell. He was building out an ortho office from scratch. And he was young. He wasn't from Memphis, had no referral sources, right? So he's like, I'm going to build this thing on the internet, right? So when people go to look for braces or look for Invisalign, I want them to find me on the internet. I want to bring them in and close that business and build my patient base that way. To me, which made a lot of sense because I was in digital marketing. I had taught myself search engine optimization back in 2008. That's when I learned it, back when Google would allow you to print out what they call their webmaster tools. And I printed it out and I had it put it in a 3-ring binder, punched holes in all of it. I made my own textbook on how to rank websites highly on Google. And then I just started practicing and gotten good at it. So by the time, fast forward to 2012, and I met Dr. Kyle, this was an easy space for me to play in, because I'm working for landscapers and roofers and HVAC guys with all this competition. And here he comes, he's an orthodontist. He's one of 6 in town. And he wants to rank highly on Google. And these guys aren't even invested in digital marketing, right? This is an old school way of doing business still, where people don't have websites. They're not running ads on Google. They're not thinking about social media. So I was running in that space. So when I met the orthodontic world, met Dr. Kyle and got introduced to the orthodontic world, I realized wow, there's a lot of room for growth and opportunity for me here to grow this thing, not just in Memphis and the surrounding areas, but all over the country. Fast forward to about 2-3 years later now, I've probably got 13, 14 orthodontists under my belt. I've still got all these other businesses I'm working with. And Dr. Kyle and I have become fast friends. Our kids are the same age. They're going to school together. We're going to Memphis Grizzlies games together. We're hanging out. I'm popping into his office all the time and taking cupcakes and getting to know his staff and his family. So we just became friends. And one day we're at a Grizzlies game and he looked at me and he's like, dude, why don't we just do this for orthodontists? Just start an agency and just focus on orthodontists. I was like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. Off came Neon Canvas from that. Probably happened 6 months later. We had Neon Canvas off and running. And the first clients we ever got, we went to the American Association of Orthodontics. It was in Orlando, Florida in 2016. And maybe it was 2015. I think it was 2016. And we didn't even get a booth on the trade show floor. I just rented a suite across the street at the Marriott. went and like filled up my bar there with like the local liquor store and mixers, and I'm just like bartending, like back to my roots in my 20s, like bartending, making drinks for these. Like I invited 50 orthodontists to this top secret, we're gonna give you $1 million marketing plan, and the $1 million marketing plan was just hire me. Like I just got the secret sauce, come in, pay me this retainer, and I'm going to do your marketing. And we got like 5 clients out of that meeting, and off and
Was this
running.
in your hotel room? This is
Yeah, in
like
a
the
hotel
mini
room.
bar at your
It
hotel
was like
room?
a suite at the Marriott, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was like a hotel. How the suites sometimes they have those little areas, but yeah, totally. It was a really nice penthouse hotel. My cost that weekend were the hotel room for that night is the only night I booked that room. My liquor cost, and my travel to get there. So I probably spent like, $3,000 or something, and it resulted in, I don't know what that would have been, $600,000 worth of business that year, and off and running. But I learned a lot in that process. And one of the things I learned was specifically in the niches of dental in orthodontist is these doctors have to replace their patient base all the time. Same thing with like endodontists and periodontists and oral surgeons. Dentists who are doing cleanings can create that residual income. But if you're an orthodontist, those kids are in braces for 2-3 years. You got to find a new kid in braces, or you've got to continue to cycle in. So they have to be invested in marketing. And it's only recently, and I'd say recently, the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, that orthodontists as a profession have even thought about the internet as a way to bring in new patients, or dentists as a whole.
So I I know that storytelling is really important, and especially, I mean, at Neon Canvas, it seems like you guys are master storytellers. Can you tell us a little bit about more about that and how you bring that experience to life for your clients for their patients?
Yeah, story is the most amazing way to market anything, right? Because our brains are wired to conserve energy. So when I'm sitting here yapping, most people's brains are just like turned to just turn me off. Like, I know that's what my kids and everybody around me does when I start yapping. They just tune me out, right? Story's different. When you go to the movie theater, you watch a movie and they draw you in. That's the only time you're going to have an hour and a half, 2 hours where you're totally locked in on focused on something. And that's because story allows the brain to like turn itself off, right? From all of the like caught up in the mind and focus on something, right? And lean into something. So when you're a marketer, you've got to figure that out, or people are just tuning your advertising, your marketing, your messaging out. So great marketing is storytelling. And there's so many ways to do that because the colors of your logo tell you a story. The way that your office is designed and layout tell you a story. The fact that you have a service animal in your, or an emotional support animal in your office tells a story about who you are and what you are. The fact that you are a third generation doctor, right? Like your grandfather's office was here and then your dad's office was here. And now that's a story, right? And you have to lean into that because if you're the third generation dentist or orthodontist in your location, that's not the same story as the guy that came in working for Smile Doctors, right? These are two completely, and you both have to leverage those, right? If you're working for Smile Doctors, you have to leverage the faster treatment times and technology and advancements and more appointment options and all this flexibility, right? That's if you're going against that guy and you're the third generation orthodontist, you're telling the story of like, hey, my family has been here for decades, for 60 years. We've been serving the patients of this community. So it wouldn't be surprised at all if when you brought your kid in, we saw the mom, we saw the grand. There's years and years of history and lineage. You've got to lean into that storytelling. So what we do as marketers is we fly out a team to no matter where you're at. We shoot video, we shoot photography, we sit you down on video, we bring you on the pack. We hear those stories, right? And then we craft that story to create a message that fits to the persona that we're selling to, right? So if you're a teenager, then that story and that messaging has to look way different than if you're a mom of a 9-year-old kid. So that once we have the story, then we have to craft and mold it to the various audiences that we're marketing to, whether that's on Instagram or Facebook or a Google search. Or maybe it's completely different and we're sponsoring a playground or a sports league where we've got your logo on a badge on every kid playing football or baseball or basketball in the entire, suburb of Minneapolis or Detroit or something, right? Like that. Now we're talking to a mom, we're talking to a young kid. We're doing different storytelling, but we're using the same principles and ideas of creating affinity. You've got to kind of have that story arc. You got to have a hero. Understanding your hero is that, you think about Star Wars is the perfect way to think about a story. Is, you've got like your traditional good versus evil, right? And in the dental world, the evil is the smile, your terrible smile. You hate your smile, right? You don't smile, you don't have confidence, you're not the person that you could become because you don't love your smile, you don't love who you are. And that's the gateway to that's the gateway to who you are, right? Your face, the eyes, and the smile, and the way that you look in public. First impressions matter. So that's kind of the big bad wolf that we're marketing against, right? Is this, aspirational identity that you want to look beautiful and deserve to look the way you want. So we're shaping that against but also where people get in trouble with the storytelling is like the doctor wants to make themselves the hero, right? They want to be the Luke Skywalker, but they're not. See, the Luke Skywalker's the patient. The doctor's the Yoda, right? So that's where you got to understand story, and the way to come in and shape this is, okay, the patient, you deserve to look the way you look. You're the hero of the story. You're good versus evil. You're fighting evil, right? And I'm just Yoda here to guide you along that process, right? That's where businesses and small businesses and doctors get in trouble, is they spent 10 years going to school and they've got, they're the smartest people in their class and they're brilliant. Yes, you are, but forget, in this case, you're not the hero anymore. Your patient's the hero, and you are the Yoda, right? So you've got to kind of take on that guide process. And then the last piece of the story that you have to add, you got the good versus evil. You've got the kind of battle that you need to get there. You got to come in, you got to see us. You might have to have some work done on your mouth. I mean, that's all kind of this, conflict that you got to go through. But at the end is this beautiful ending, right? That you're selling the story. You've got this beautiful smile. You are who you want. And you also got to sell, in order to sell the beautiful ending, you also have to show that dark part of the story too. Like, well, what if Darth Vader wins? What if the bad guy wins? Now you're not going to love your smile. You're not going to love who you are. So all part of the story is shaping all of this to eventually show this beautiful ending that me as the guide, the doctor, I'm going to help you get to. And it's the same thing in our business. The hero becomes the doctor. We become the Yoda. The doctor becomes the hero in our story of how we sell to our patients. The same thing with you guys, right? You guys are the Yoda in your business, right? You're not the hero. The doctor's got to remember the patient's the hero. So I know that was a long-winded way to tell you about story, but that's how I think about it.
No, my mind's racing, and I don't know where to start with Star Wars, heroes. But I'll say this first. I can't imagine, when you're telling story, how anyone could tune out or fall asleep. Let's start there.
Thank you, Remy. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And let's talk more about story. So, can you tell us an example of how telling a story has impacted a practice, either an orthodontic or pediatric practice, in a positive way? Talk to us about a specific story that stands out to you.
Yeah, I will use one that's kind of like close and personal to me, is like here in Memphis, right? So this is a city that's impoverished. 70% of the people in Memphis are living under the poverty line, right? So there's a lot of people that are fitting into this exact thing I'm talking about, where like their parents didn't have the money to put them in braces or, do any kind of big time work. So when Dr. Kyle entered the market, he, this is the exact thing I'm telling you. I'm like, dude, you can go all in. You can bring something to people that never would have had a chance to have this smile by just the way you structure your marketing, who you're marketing to, and then how you structure your payment terms for when they come in. So now his practice, I mean, they probably start, I don't know what it is, 1,000 cases a year, 700 to 1,000 cases a year. And half of those are coming from all over the inner city of Memphis, who have very reasonable payment terms, right? So he'll take a down payment from them of, let's say, 500 or 1,000. Maybe they have dental insurance that kicks in, $1,000 or $2,000 towards that treatment. And then, for $99 a month, something very affordable now, we're going to be able to get you the smile that you want, right? So that's a perfect example of like a doctor who came in served the inner city community and now has a $4 million ortho practice, right? By leaning in to where he's at. You don't have to go to Austin, Texas. You don't have to go to Atlanta, Georgia. You don't have to be in Phoenix to like have, if you're a doctor looking to, like, you can go and really like use the tools that you have, right? Like use this story that you have, like you're coming in to help the community and still have this wildly successful practice, have the life of your dreams and be serving the community that you live in. Which I think is what doctors, the Hippocratic Oath, is what they should be doing, right? They shouldn't be in it just to make money. Like, yes, that's a byproduct of you being brilliant and you having great businesses, but they don't teach you anything about business school and med school. That's what a lot of doctors don't understand is like, you're coming out, yes, you're brilliant, you've been the top of your class. You also have no idea how to run a business, right? So a lot of them go to work into a hospital group, or maybe they go work for somebody else. Very rarely are they betting on themselves like right out of the gate and starting their own practices. But I think they would find with the right people in their corner, companies like you guys and Neon, where like you can really have these consultants show you how to be running your business and taking, in our case, this entire worry off of you. If you hire Neon Canvas to do your marketing, you don't have to worry about where your leads are coming from. That's like turnkey. I've got a team of 60 that's going to be worried about driving leads into your practice, right? So that's something that okay, I can just go focus on, the clinical side of my business, or, how are we converting in the TC office or the treatment coordinator office, or how are we answering phones? And we can help you with all that. We can put you in the right consultants for all that. But we can, if you, that's the one world I think in medical where it's built, the support systems are built around you and the banking systems are built around you. Bankers love when you have doctor in front of your name, so they're going to line up to give you the money that you need to go start these practices and even hire the agencies and the consultants that you need to be successful at that.
Yeah, everything that you're saying really resonates with us because we do a decent amount of our business is startups, and they are at a really scary point in their career where they know they want to own a business, but it's not easy, and they have a lot of debt, and starting a practice can be incredibly expensive. And so our story is kind of similar. It's it's kind of like Little Red Riding Hood. We want to be the guide to help Little Red Riding Hood safely through the forest, because you never know where the big bad wolf is, and you want to be able to hold their hand through that process, just because it's Remy has this this joke that like a lot of times we're really just acting as cheerleaders because they're emotionally kind of at an insecure moment in their in their life, because it's all happening so fast, and they can't afford to mess up, and so yeah, it is.
Yes, it's a scary time, and I think that's when you need the right people in your corner. I think what you guys are doing, it's not, it's a, like, let us cheer for you, let us be a consultant for you, let us get you in the right spot, in the right places with the right TI and the right tenant and the right landlords, and let's put the right people together, for long-term solutions. It's like, not how do we get you here for a 5-year or 7-year or 10-year lease, like how do we get you here forever? Right? How do we make you a staple in this community? And it's the same adage I go back to as I see these doctors like shopping. We'll be at the big American Association of Orthodontics. Fast forward 10 years later from the one in Orlando, we'll be in Philly this year. And there'll be guys going around shopping for dental chairs. And it's like, dude, like, how are you going to spend $40,000 on chairs and not spend $40,000 to put butts in those chairs? So they need to be thinking about things in a way that's holistic to their practice. Yes, you want it to look beautiful. You also need to be invested in bringing those seats in, bringing those people in.
So how do you help practices actually craft a brand story that feels authentic and differentiates them from their competitors? I mean, I'm assuming it's a deep process where you dig in substantially.
Yeah, the first thing you got to do is have a great team, right? I've got a great team of storytellers, and what I have figured out is there's multiple places and ways that you're telling the story. Video and photography are obviously a huge piece of that, right? But so you've got your online brand. What does your website look like? What do your social media channels look like? But then you also have like, what does your logo look like? What do the folders look like? What words are you using? And so we've just taken a lot of people throughout the year, a lot of trial and error of figuring out exactly where those nuts and bolts fit together to tell the most cohesive and best story. And so, yeah, those are the places. Those are the main levers we're pulling: video, photography, your website, your online ads, right? Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, X, LinkedIn, etc. You're doing that all cohesively, and then we're making sure your branding around the city is cohesive and looks like are you is your name on that playground by that school? Are you is your banner here? Are you in the outfield? Are you in the places that make a lot of sense? Up in Chicago or Minneapolis, like I've got a lot of our clients going in, and they'll sponsor the local hockey association, right? Hockey's real big up in these areas, right? Where they'll come in and they'll fit every kid in the hockey association for a free mouth guard. It's a brilliant part of your story. Now you've got every single kid, and oh, by the way, we got to get your information while you're here. We need to know your name and age and weight and address and no. You're bringing every single kid in. You're giving them a free mouth guard, but now you have that one, they step foot in your practice, but two, you have all the information you need now to market to them. And part of your story is look at us give back to the community. Oh, aren't we doing a great job by giving these free mouth guards out to kids who their teeth may be jacked up because their parents didn't know how to fit them in the right mouth.
Yeah, that is brilliant. Talk to us a little bit more about the process. I mean, we're talking about branding, logos, online presence, your website, and so forth. Where does this all start? I mean, how are you doing an audit when you sit down and talk to us a little bit about your process?
Yeah, that's a great start. We have a very consultative sales process where when you come to me and you're in Naperville, Illinois, I'm going to be able to tell you exactly how many people are searching for braces or Invisalign in that area. So I'm going to say, okay, Dr. X, you've got 2,000 searches a month. Right now, you've got 12 competitors. Your website's getting 200 of those 2,000. You're getting 10%, right? And you're converting out of that 10%, you're converting 3% of them, those 200 into patients. And then you're 60 to 100 of those are actually becoming, or not patients, but consultations. Of those consultations are actually becoming patients. So we back them into that, right? And show them, here's the piece of pie, right? Here's your piece of pie. And if you spent X, you can increase your pie to this much. So we use that in the very beginning processes to show them, these are real number and data that exists out there, and our systems are going to capture this for you. So then we start to help them understand what the return on investment is here. So if you're spending $60,000 a year, what should you be getting in return? We're looking at probably, $500,000 to $800,000 a year in return in production from that 50, 60,000 you're spending. So we're able to show them those levers. That's a big piece of it. Then we start understanding their business, right? So yeah, there's a little, going back and forth in the beginning. We're learning your story. We're learning, we're getting the nuts and bolts of your story. A lot of that hopefully has been done on your website in the past. You kind of got a lot of that ready to go. But if not, we've got these questionnaires that kind of walk you through that. We fill them through that, they fill those out, and now we've got this like bucket of information now that we start picking out of, and we start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Like, okay, this is great information that we can use. This may be used as a negative. We'll ignore that, and we'll figure out how to storytell around that. A negative, for instance, may be like when Dr. Kyle was starting out, he's been straightening teeth for 2 years, right? Does he have the same story to tell as the guy that's been doing it for 40 years, whose dad was an orthodontist? No, of course not. Like, he doesn't have that experience. But what he does have is Dippin' Dots in his office, right? And he's got a fun atmosphere, and he wears sneakers, and he's more affordable, and he's more fun. So all of a sudden, you start to close that gap by understanding where the deficiencies may be. So we do that, right? We got to in order to show the positive, we got to understand what the negative is too. Same thing if like some of the, like one of the big DSOs came to us, right? And we don't want to turn down that business of 40 practices. But at the same time, if I'm that DSO, I've got to worry about, okay, if I'm opening across the street from the doctor who's been there for 15 years and he's been serving the community, he's made a staple. He's very affordable. He's done all these things. People love him. How do I tell my brand story if I'm the Smile Doctors against that local orthodontist, right? So now I have to start chip. Well, we've got the money to invest in technology. We're not, inflating our prices because, we have a big conglomerate. So instead of braces costing you $6,000 over there, they only cost you $4,500 over here. So if I'm big corporate ortho, I start telling that story the other way, right? Of why we are the better option.
Sure.
That doctor, school after school spots are a premium, right? So like between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock, you can't get into that office. But over here, we've got more doctors working for us. So we've got more locations. So we've got more availability for you. We do online treatment. So you got to figure out what differentiates that practice, because they're not all the same, as you guys well know. No two practices are created equal.
That's a great blueprint for, individualized strategic planning, right? What about the other side of the coin? Can you talk to us about what common mistakes are you seeing doctors make before you get involved that are avoidable?
Well, the thing I'm seeing right now that's, in my opinion, the biggest mistake is that it's like the butterfly effect, right? So like you're doing, like, you've got your sister's brother-in-law does Google ads. So you're running your Google ads with your sister's brother-in-law. Your buddy sells billboards, so you got a billboard over here. One of your old employees works for this practice management software, and she sold you the practice management. So you got this practice management software that doesn't really fit what you're doing. So you've got these practices that are like hodgepodge. You're doing all these things in different places, and then you've got turnover in the area that's managing all these places, right? Because you only keep this practice manager for so long, or et cetera. Or maybe the wife started as the practice manager and now they've had 3 kids and she's kind of all, who's managing the practice. Those are the pitfalls you got to see. Is like, you really need to get in early on and understand what your technology and your marketing services and your offerings are going to be, and figure out where are the places that I can go with the least amount of friction. I don't need to have 5 different places that I've got my marketing dollars spread out, right? You need one place that's focused on how to get you the biggest return on investment. Same thing with like your consultants, right? It's like, if you went and hired a consultant who's like really great at the back office stuff, getting your insurance and getting your financing and getting all that stuff together, but you didn't hire the consultant who's great at answering the phones, you've answered that question. And it's unlikely that somebody's like paying to be at the top of that search, right? So now you've used what we call the long form. And I think, Nick, this is a lot what you're talking about with content. The long tail keyword that's like, when my child should see an orthodontist, or why does my teeth hurt when I chew gum, or what is the discoloration in my gums for? People ask the internet questions like that, or even now, more importantly, they ask their Chat GPT or their Grok or their AI. They're asking Siri into their phone. They're asking these questions, and if you've got content or a podcast or an audio bite or a YouTube channel that answers that question, now they're on your brand. They're interacting with your brand. And that's where we come in to help you show, okay, now they're interacting with your brand. How do you convert that into a consultation with them, right? To solve that problem. I hope that answers your question, Nick. And this is where I think people like the real shit. I like that your podcast is, a little bit like, they know we're not just out here, with the, with the crew behind us doing all this. Like, we're in the trenches, guys. We're real entrepreneurs here.
Yeah, no, it's the real deal. We've had some technical glitches in the past, but this today is probably our best, our truest version of ourselves. Yeah, I mean, like, what when you're talking about some of that, what kind of conversion rates? I mean, like, that's that long game. You have to really kind of, keep going.
Well, it's all boats rise at the top, right? And so, like, conversion rate wise, like, it is going to be industry standard. Like, yes, you're asking me, what are the chances they're going to read a blog post about when my child's seeing an orthodontist and actually come in? But that's not what happens. What happens is it takes 6 or 7 points of contact before someone's ready to buy from you. right? So this has been really well studied in history, right? So if I know it takes 6 points of contact for you're ready to buy from me, but I've got my client's name is on your kid's jersey, so you got 3 of those jerseys at home, you're washing it, you're seeing it all the time. Then you read a blog post that I wrote. Your friend recommended me. There, I drive by your office all the time, and then I called you, and your front lady desk was great. Boom! I just got my 6 points of contact, but I wouldn't have had that had you not read that blog post, right? It would have taken me something else, a grocery cart, or some other ability for me to see your face before I would have been ready to buy. So maybe that blog post, no, it didn't convert into a consult, but it may have been the thing to think that's where I want to take my kid to get their braces because they answered my question.
Yeah. I actually, we just got gibbets, for Crocs that we're want to hand out to a lot of our orthodontist clients so that they can, that they're handing out our stuff because they're cute, these cute little bird images, but we want to kind of give them an opportunity to be seeing our stuff even and to remember us. We're trying to incorporate that kind of stuff in our own marketing.
Yeah, it's a brilliant point of contact, and then something to think about there is that there's two marketing dollars that you have. I'm going to contend that one of them should be much higher than the other. I'll let you guys guess which, but you have marketing dollars that are meant to brand. So your billboards, your grocery cart, face things, your urinal mask, all this, like those are meant to just get your brand out there. Then you have marketing dollars that are meant to actually convert into actual clients. Obviously, I think you should be spending more money on the marketing dollar meant to convert than you should on the branding dollar. But both of these are important pieces.
So
we agree with that. We agree with that.
How are you measuring the real impact of just social media marketing? How does that work?
Yeah, social media is a really tricky one. That's another one I'm going to sit here and tell you, like, if you're asking me, should I be invested in social media because I'm going to get all these patients from it, then I'm going to tell you immediately, no, that's not the reason that you're there. The reason that you're on social media is 2 things. One, you're driving signals to Google that you're legit and that you have an active, engaged audience. That's one of the reasons. 2, you're doing it because when someone, like for instance, let's use Neon Campus example, and then I'll go back to why a doctor should do it. But, somebody hears about us and we don't have these huge social media followings, right? Like we have maybe 1,000 people on our Instagram or our Facebook or whatever that's followed us. But if a client hears about us and then they're like, oh, well, I'm thinking about hiring this marketing agency, and then they go to our social media and there's nothing there, they're gonna be like, what do they know about it, right? So even if like our team posted something yesterday on Instagram where they were like, they did this like thing where they were taking mug shots. And like, it was brilliant. It was just a smart little piece of marketing. I don't know. It may have gotten 40 likes and 5 or 6 comments, but the elasticity of that, when you guys go back and look at it, or when a doctor goes back and looked at it and be like, oh, that's good. Like they're good at this. It's to prove you are who you say you are. So Nick, I would say it's really, really tough to track the dollars of social media marketing back to an exact ROI on how many patients you got out of that. But if it's part of your marketing budget of 7% of, let's say your marketing budget is 7% and your overall ROI on your marketing budget was 5X, does it really matter the granular pieces of it, or does it matter that the overall holistic storytelling that you're doing is working?
Yeah, it's certainly the latter. Is 7% a real number? What key metrics can you comfortably share?
Yeah, if 10%, if you're growing, let's say you're between startup and $1.5 million, you should be spending 10% minimum because you're in growth mode, right? So like if you did $1.5 million, then your marketing budget would be $150,000, right? If you did $1 million, your marketing budget is $70,000. That's a real number. If you're trying to grow, from $1 million to 10 million or 4 million or 5 million, and you're not investing at least $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in your marketing, good luck. Like, just good luck. I hope that you've got a plan in place. Me personally, I don't see a lot of businesses doing that. If you're doing $5 million and your ortho practice is humming along, now you could probably drop that down to 5%, right? Like it's probably safe to assume that, $500,000 a year is maybe a little hefty for marketing, right? For an ortho practice, you could probably get away with $250,000, and $250,000 is getting you a lot of stretch if you're using that money the right way. I mean, you've got billboards, you've got shopping carts, you're sponsoring school teams, you've got jerseys, you're running online ads, you got a great website, you've got great storytelling, you're using influencers to mommy bloggers who are coming in there. You've got a budget to do almost anything you want to do. That's where you need great consultants to say, okay, we're doing $20,000 toward influencers, $30,000 on social media marketing, $100,000 on Google ads, $40,000 on billboards, and really helping you figure out exactly how to spend that 5 to 10% to get the best ROI. I built an ROI calculator here in our business that shows you, we're trying to really figure that out. Okay, of these 200 clients that you started last month, 45 of them came from Google ads, and show you exactly what your return on investment is.
That's really cool. I mean, especially especially when you can kind of delineate specific things where, like we had talked about, not everything is geared exactly towards, some of it is more geared towards branding, but to be able to explicitly call that out. I mean, I want to know how you really help these startup practices align their marketing investment with their overall business plans and goals.
Yeah, we've got a plan in place for startups. We call it Neon Now, and it's a tighter, more succinct package for startups where we're going to build your logo, build your brand, build your website, do search engine optimization to help you rank on Google and run Google ads. So I'm going to take the things that I know are the highest ROI activities that you have for a startup, and I'm going to put a marketing plan in place to activate that budget. I still want you to have 30 as a startup, $30 to $50,000 somewhere in there for a marketing budget. And that's going to get you everything you need, from the logo, what your brand looks like, what your colors are, that entire package, all the way through driving leads into your practice. So it's, your average small business, and your average small business is $1.5 million in year revenue. Your average small business spends $1,500 a month on marketing. So I've taken that $1,500 and I've put together a plan that's going to get you the biggest bang for your buck. So that's the way that we do it here at Neon Canvas to help grow businesses. I know other people have different ideas about it. I've been in this game for a long time, and the biggest ROI activities that you can participate in are online ads. There's just no doubt about it. You can run an ad for what someone's searching for you guys. If I'm a dental office, if I'm a dentist looking for a dental office, and I've got a commercial property that's for lease, I'm running ads against that dentist looking for dental office all day, every day, trying to convert that into a lease. If I'm a dentist, I'm running ads all day long looking for people who are within 4 miles of my zip code, or not necessarily my zip code, but my actual location, 4-mile radius of my location, who make at least $60,000 a year, who have, a kid, one or at least one kid or more. Right. So I've profiled into that demographic. You live close to me. You've got the income to afford me, and you've got a kid. I'm going to market to you.
Are you guys actually helping startup practices create the name for their new business also as part of the branding package?
Yeah, we will definitely do that. I think most people probably before they start a business, come to you with a name in there. But I mean, we're renaming things all the time. And so you'll see, a local practice. It's like they bought Sky Creek Orthodontics over here and Dr. Pegasus Orthodontics over here, and they're bringing them under one brand of Memphis Orthodontics. We do a lot.
What's one marketing trend that really excites you right now? And then on the flip side, what's one that you think practices should be cautious about?
I'm going to use the same. I'm going to use the same thing for both. It's influencer marketing. I'm really tapped into this idea that local influencer is where it's at. So I don't necessarily I would love Brad Pitt or, Matthew McConaughey to show up for my brand. Do I really need that as much as I need the mommy blogger to do that, who's got 2,000 followers? But she's so tapped in, those 2,000 followers, look at where she goes to the gym, look at where she tan, where does she vacation, what kind of car does she drive? And they're copying all of that stuff. That's the one I want. So the local influencer, I think, is the biggest arbitrage that you can grab right now, because you could go in and find somebody, maybe you just give them free treatment just to tag you, and then boom, now this hardcore audience that they're tapped into is wanting to come, is going to come into you. The reason I'll also use that as a caution is because you're dealing with people, and you don't, you're going to make this deal. This person, you're going to put braces on this person who's supposed to tag you. What happens when they don't come in? They don't tag. You're going to have to cut your losses a little bit in that when you're dealing with like individual influencers on that level, because it's not like a business yet. People are still trying to navigate that world, but it's an exciting place to be playing.
The world seems to be changing at an incredible pace, and I'm sure, in real estate over the past, couple of decades, it's substantially different. I imagine in the marketing world, it's the same. What shifts are you seeing in dental practice marketing today that you weren't seeing or how has it changed from just even several years back?
Yeah, I mean, this could have just been like our AI segment, right? Because like that's where you're at right now is like how is intelligence, and AI has always been around. Like Google's AI, like an algorithm's AI, like it's just hot now, right? So in practice marketing, like how if a website, if a AI bot can build a website now and write content and deploy your Google ads and deploy social content, like what do I need humans for? That's the change. But what you're learning is AI is only as great as the inputs, right? So like the better the inputs, the better the outputs, and people are still in charge of the outputs. So that's the big one that you're going to have to figure out is how to leverage AI and leverage it in a smart way to where it just doesn't look like a bot wrote it or it looks like what everybody else's bot is doing, but it's actually used to leverage to make you smarter and give you more insight and make you more efficient. Figuring out AI, how to use your efficiencies, that's the key.
I was about to jump in and ask you to please incorporate AI into your response, and it's probably the third time that you have covered something that I was about to get into. So you're ahead of the game here. But how specifically, how are you incorporating AI, or how is it affecting what you're doing day to day?
Yeah, I mean, I just did this the other day at a group, and I think it'll probably play pretty well, like here, even for you guys. But if I said, to like my AI bot right now, like I just opened ChatGPT, I was like, hey, give me a marketing plan for an orthodontic practice in Memphis, Tennessee, targeting 4 miles of the zip code 38139. So like if I just did that, right? Like if I just said, hey, give me a marketing plan for an orthodontic practice, what is AI going to spit out? That's the kind of like that's where you want to be. It's like in here talking with your AI bot, right? So I just sit there, recorded all that. Now it's going to sit down, it's going to create a plan, and I can send that to you guys, and you guys can send that out. But it's like that's where it's going. Is you got to be asking, your AI chatbot, like, hey, what are 3 topics right now that people are searching for related to orthodontics in Chicago, Illinois? Asking your AI bot those type of inputs so you can get great output.
I am mind blown, and I think about what you just did, and I'm still in this mindset where I see results like that, and I still have this repetition of it's a Google search. I type that in, and it's hard for me to connect to the fact that it's not spitting out Google search results or search engine results. It's way more comprehensive and thoughtful. It's pretty unbelievable. You're saying that you can get some good information with good input. You can get some decent and thoughtful output.
Yeah, I think what you got to do is you got to work in the deep searches, and you got to ask it to ask you questions, and then you got to ask it to refine. And there's some other little keys and tips and tricks I can give you guys. For instance, like your AI loves when things are on fire. So one of the things maybe you're doing is like, this is like, if you don't, this is life and death for me. My business will close tomorrow if you don't get me the absolute greatest market. Now your bot's like, oh, it's just like anything else. Like people always like are going to run to put out the fire. But if there's a little smoke there, they're like, oh, I wonder what's smoking over there. But if it's in flames, you're going to run to put it out. It's the same thing with your bots. It's like they react to that urgency. So if you're just like, oh, give me a marketing plan, you're just going to get a marketing plan. If you're like, give me the greatest in-depth market, do it as quickly as possible, deep search on this, ask me now your bot's like, oh, like they get excited about that, right? And they start freaking out. So that's kind of some of those tips and tricks is like, again, the better input, the better output.
We're coming up to time, so we wanna kind of circle back and ask you some more personal questions, really, just so we can close out on a high note here.
Okay.
I'm happy to lead in if that was the invite to.
Go for it.
Been sitting here. I don't know why more people don't eat or drink during these things because it's a perfect segue into. Are you drinking? Did you put that Dr. Pepper over ice? That's my favorite. Oh
It's
man,
like, and look, and it's the small one because I can't just be, cracked out on these things or whatever. That's probably a better way of saying it. I don't know, but like, I can't do too much of these. But yeah, Dr. Pepper's my guilty pleasure, and it's got to be over ice. I need it cold.
I set out to have one because it's the right size, and then it's not effective when you have 10.
Yeah, it's effective on your gut. Yeah, your dad bod. Yeah, yeah.
All right, so on to more pressing matters. What's talk to us about the best piece of advice that you've ever received that helped you in your career?
That's a good one, and I was just running my brain through it real quick. But my dad told me when I was probably like 10 or 11, he's like, "Son, pick your battles." And it's funny because like he would remind me through the years to like pick your battles, pick your battles. And a lot of that was coming from like interpersonal relationships, right? Because they're hard. Interpersonal relationships are the hardest thing that you're going to do in business, right? Managing people, whether it's your team or a vendor or a client, that's the hardest thing that you're going to do is you got to know when to pick your battles. So like if something doesn't matter to you at the point that it's like keeping you up at night or it's not going to change your life or affect you, like do you really need to battle or argue over it? That's probably the best advice I've ever had is to pick your battles. And then the secondly, just from second is that from a business perspective, is like it's the jab, 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 left, right hook from Gary Vaynerchuk, right? This book where jab, 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 what he's saying is give away is all your information. Tell people everything, jab to jab, so that when you ask them for something, it's that reciprocal. Like, well, Alex has been telling me how to market my practice for 10 years, and now I started, when I was listening to his podcast or whatever, and now I'm going to start my own practice, or I'm starting a new practice, or I got this new venture. Let me call Alex because he's been there for me. Same thing with you guys in this podcast. That's that jab, jab, jab. So give away your information. Don't be afraid to tell people your secrets because if you're really great at what you're going to do, by the time they copy it and catch up with you, you're already on to the next thing.
Love both those.
Sorry to give you two when you asked for one, but I wanted to give you one personal, one business.
If you could go back and talk to your a younger self or 20-year-old self, what would you tell them?
Oh my God, to bet on myself. I started Neon Canvas when I was 34, 35. And like, if I'd have started Neon Canvas at 25, I mean, who knows? Like, I would probably be on a jet doing this podcast right now. I'm not saying, who knows, right? I would have had more failures, more things to learn from, whatever. But like, bet on yourself. Like, why people don't bet on themselves? They'll never make sense to me. I built a team around amazing people who want to work for me and are willing to follow my vision. Not everybody's tuned the same, but like if you're that young, like hungry, scrappy 1%er, you're always like winning at everything you do. Like, why are you working for somebody else? Like, go bet on yourself.
What's the one piece of advice you'd give a dentist who's looking to level up their marketing in a meaningful way?
Invest in digital, invest online. There's a piece of pie to be playing there. And like, if you are sitting around and you're like, increase your Google ad budget today, tomorrow. If you're spending 500, spend 1,000. If you're spending 1,000, spend 1,500. Increase it immediately. And if you're not getting more ROI out of that, fire whoever's doing it and find somebody who's good at it, because that's like filling up the bathtub with hot water. If you love hot baths, put hot water in there. If you want to make more money, buy Google ads.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's like our clients, we want to give them as much the best information and as much information, so that they can make the most informed decisions, and when they're spending money and they're not, and it's not thoughtful or it's not really well considered. I think it's really important to like understand why why you're doing why you're doing it that way, or why you suggest doing it that way, and understand where the money is really going, what the ROI is. And I think it probably makes it a lot easier for them to really buy in.
Yeah. Well, this was fun, guys. Man, I appreciate it. I thought you guys were great hosts. You asked great questions, and I want you to stay in touch. If there's anything I can do for your audience or you, find me at neoncanvas.com. My email address is alex@neoncanvas.com, and I'd be happy to stay in touch.
Awesome. No, we really appreciate your time. I know we've gone a bit long, but hopefully we can
Perfect.
edit out most of the shenanigans that happened mid pod. So really appreciate your time. Again, thank you so much.
Yep.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Great job, Remy. Thanks, guys. Bye. Signing off.